I shall discuss on the topic labor movements in India post 1950s. The Communist Party of India, which played a leading role in the post-war upsurge, adopted a new political line in the Second Congress held at Calcutta from 28 February to 6 March in the year 1948. I will refer briefly to the new political line of the Communist Party, which virtually guided the activities of the All Indian Trade Union Congress from 1948 to 1952 and disrupted the labor movement. State intervention that became a feature in industrial policy after independence played no mean role in promoting the trade union movement. As we shall see, there was a revival of the labor movement from 1954 onwards. The deadlock in the labor movement that began in 1949 was broken. It seems that the trade union regrouped its forces, particularly in Madras, Bombay, Kanpur and West Bengal in the 1950s, though the laboring men remained divided among themselves. Despite labor legislation, industrial unrest was intense in the 1950s, which could be related to rationalization, retrenchment, layoffs and low wages. Though the railway strike of 9th March 1949 proved abortive, Bombay witnessed a big strike of textile workers in the summer of 1950, which was led by the Hind Mazdoor Sabha, sponsored by the socialists. The workers' main demand was 3 months' wages as bonus, which was not accepted by the industrial court. While the Indian National Trade Union Congress, that is INTUC, the Rashtriya Mil Mazdoor Sangh, opposed the strike, the All India Trade Union Congress chose to support it. The strike, which commenced on 14th August, achieved a large measure of success. On 31st August, the workers of Bombay went on a token strike to express their support to the textile strike. Though the government sought to suppress the strike by resorting to firing and arresting the leading functionaries, the strike continued unabated for 55 days. In Madras, the Kaleshwarar mills in Coimbatore was one of the first to be closed by the management. The massed satyagraha conducted by All India Trade Union Congress Union continued for a month. Some of the workers were arrested while thousands of workers gathered near the collectorate to express their solidarity for the workers. The state government finally decided to take over the mills. The victory of the workers had an impact on the textile workers who were thrown out of employment as several mills were closed during latter years. In West Bengal, the labor movement that was an impasse after the collapse of the railway strike called on 9th March 1949. Signs of revival in the 1950s. In July 1953, the tramway workers went on a strike, which was part of the popular struggle against enhancement of tram fares undertaken by the British-owned Tramways Company. More than 1,000 persons were arrested and one was killed in police firing. Jamshedpur was the center of the organized trade union movement. After independence, the labor movement in Jamshedpur entered a new phase when the communists emerged as a strong force and formed the Jamshedpur Mazdoor Union with Kedar Das, who had been elected as secretary to Bihar Assembly. Meanwhile, Michael John, who had been won over by the Tatas, affiliated the Tata Workers' Union to the Indian National Trade Union Congress. The labor movement was split in this time. It seems that the communists sought to build a militant movement. In the summer of 1957, they launched the 7-day strike at the Tata Engineering Locomotive Company, that is TELCO Telco, demanding increased dearness allowance and its linking with the cost of living index, an interim increase in wages, profit sharing bonus and introduction of production bonus. The strike achieved considerable success despite the stubborn opposition of Michael John. The strike was called off when the Labour Commissioner carried on negotiations with the strike committee and referred the dispute to adjudication. Now, I have already discussed about the labour movement, several labour movements in India during 1950s and 1960s. Now, the important question is that what was the important features of these labour movements in India in the 1950s? One may find that the important feature of these labour movements in the 1950s was the organization of government employees who formed central federations in which white-collar employees generally played the leading role. For years, discontent had been mounting among port and dock workers who demanded revision of scales of wages and better living condition. The most memorable event of this period was the All India strike of central government employees, which began on 11th July 1960. The government employees had expressed their strong discontent against the major recommendations of the Second Pay Commission, pleaded for better wages, increased dearness allowance and its linking with the cost of living index, formed the Joint Council of Action and prepared for a strike. The three central trade unions, Hind Mazdoor Sabha, United Trade Union Congress, All India Trade Union Congress, gave the call for a token strike, which received considerable response from the workers. In the face of the sagging morale of the strikes, the Joint Council of Action, led by S.M. Joshi, Nath Pai and Peter Alvars, finally decided to retreat. The unions received a jolt when hundreds of employees were victimized after the strike. Nevertheless, the strike ushered in a new phase in the labour movement, which was marked by increasing involvement of white-collar employees in the trade union movement. On the crest of the labor movement between 1954 and 1962, trade unions made considerable advance in Bombay, Madras, Kanpur, Jamshedpur, West Bengal and Ahmedabad. Industrial federations, most notably the National Federation of Post and Telegraph Employees, All India Port and Dock Workers Federation, National Federation of Indian Railway Men, All India Defence Employees Federation and All India Bank Employees Association were formed. The number of trade unions increased between 1958 and 1962. Apparently, workers rose in struggles demanding enhanced wages when the continuing rise in prices eroded their real wages. It is not clear why the movement against retrenchment had slowed down. The fragmented nature of the trade union movement, as the All India Trade Union Congress pointed out, was surely not conducive for the growth of the labor movement. The number of strikes steadily increased from 1966 onwards, while the number of workers involved in the strikes pointed to the remarkable expansion of labor movement. In the wake of devaluation and rising prices, labor unrest became intense in Tamil Nadu. There were 400 strikes in Madras until June 1966, of which Coimbatore accounted for about 150, affecting textile units as well as engineering and light engineering industries. In West Bengal and Kerala, the workers rose in militant struggles when the food crisis became acute. On 10th March, there was the Bengal Bandh that was marked by popular demonstrations against the food policy of the government. Trains, trams and buses did not run in Calcutta. Despite government repression, the popular movement continued unabated and Martyrs' Day was observed on 13th March. It was hardly surprising that strike struggles swept the country with the formation of non-Congress government in 8 states: Kerala, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Bihar, Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan and Punjab in 1967. West Bengal continued to be a center of militant movement. The All Bengal Teachers Association, that is ABTA, held a protest strike on 10th May demanding enhanced salary scale, regular payment of salary and pension to the employees. Now, one of the important question one may ask that what was the importance of the railway strike of 8 May 1974 in the history of labor movement in India. The climax of the strike struggles was marked by the railway strike of 8 May 1974. On the eve of the strike, the All India Trade Union Congress had formed the Indian Railway Workers Federation with Parvati Krishnan as its president. Meetings and demonstrations were regularly held by the National Campaign Committee in the railway towns as well as railway workshops in support of the demand for revision of wages. The strike began on 8 May. On 15th May, an All India General Strike was observed to express solidarity with the railway strike. There was unprecedented repression. Over 40,000 workers were arrested till 19 May. West Bengal topped the list with about 5,000 arrests, followed by Maharashtra with 3,000. About 11,000 workers were discharged. Hundreds of workers were evicted from their quarters, while some of them were forced to sign a loyalty bond. It was reported that the strike was almost total in most of the railway workshops. The strike was called off after 20 days on 28 May. The strike, which was supported by all the central trade unions bearing the Indian National Trade Union Congress, ended in defeat. The Indira Gandhi government that had adopted some radical measures in the past hardly showed any mercy for railway strikers. Instead, Dange seemed to have grown wise when he bitterly commented, "The strike proved the eternal truth of Marxism-Leninism that bourgeoisie democracy is democracy for the bourgeoisie and dictatorship for the working class." As this account of the major strike struggles show, the labor movement steadily grew in the country as a whole from 1966 onwards. The labor movement reached its peak. In this period, the conservative forces, allied with some leftist sections, sought to paralyze the central government and capture political power. As a preemptive measure, the emergency was proclaimed by the Indira Gandhi government in June 1975. The All India Trade Union Congress, however, decided to support the emergency to defeat counter-revolutionary bid for power, apparently ignoring the lessons of the railway strike. Meanwhile, the Indira Gandhi government had embarked on a rightist policy designed to crush the strike struggles of the working class. As time went on, the employers began to take full advantage of this new situation. While they launched a concerted offensive in the name of recession and resorted to massive layoffs, retrenchments and closures, adverse working conditions were sought to be imposed on the workers. The emergency conditions imposed severe restrictions on normal trade union activities and traditional forms of agitations, even holding of meetings and demonstrations. The number of industrial disputes declined from 2,938 in 1974 to 1,834 in 1975. But discontent of the workers had begun to grow and strikes, very often spontaneous and sporadic, occurred in some states. It is noteworthy that the failure of the rail strike had made a deep impact on the workers as well as the white-collar employees. They seem to have become tired of militant struggles which were not likely to be successful in this period. Clearly, the emergency heralded a bleak period for the working class. Now, the question is that what was the condition of female laborers in the growth of the labor movement in post-1950s? What was a prominent feature of this period was the growth of the movement of the working class women that developed as part of the struggle for national independence and became gradually linked with the trade union movement and was radicalized under its impact. Thousands of female laborers joined strike struggles over the years and were roused to political life and social movement. The growing movement of the female laborers could be related to the displacement of female workers from the industry, notably the cotton textile industry, jute industry, coal mines and tea plantation. The Status of Women Committee report, which was published in 1975, drew pointed attention to the displacement of female workers from industry in the 1960s. When we look at the country as a whole, the declining trend in female employment was accelerated between 1961 and 1971. The declining trend of women's employment in factories could be explained by the provision of maternity leave and other amenities involving extra expenses and the need for rationalization and modernization in the older factories. In this background, the National Federation of Indian Women sought to organize the working women and bring them into a central organization focusing on their immediate and long-term demands, which included equal pay for equal work, more job opportunities for women, wider access to vocational training, reservation of jobs for women in government, semi-government and local self-government institutions. Over the years, the National Federation of Indian Women remained a left-oriented organization that held annual conferences with delegates elected from state committees. The delegates came mostly from the middle-class families. Although the CPIM did not join the CPI-dominated National Federation of Indian Women, the Center of Indian Trade Union, that is C2, could not fail to be conscious of the importance of organizing the working women. In the resolution on working women adopted in 1970, it was noted that women workers were retrenched by the employers to evade the provision of the Maternity Benefit Act that 40% of women workers were employed as casual workers in cashew, coir, biri and lac industries and were paid extremely low wages, that many women workers were deprived of maternity benefits due to ignorance, that creches for the children were not provided for in many factories. What is worth noting is that the resolution called upon the unions to pay more attention to the organization of women workers so that they should be able to play a bigger role in the trade union movement. Although most of these demands were often articulated by the National Federation of Indian Women, the CPIM chose to build separate women's organizations which had become viable in some states. The other major political parties also followed the same course and scarcely sought to initiate movements on common issues. For the continuing advance of the movement, what was needed was a new perspective corresponding to the realities of the situation. As it has been pointed out that the women's organizations to be effective were required to acquire permanent political skill and influence, to exert pressure on the political parties as well as the government to protect rights won after years of struggle. The government and the political parties could change their stance in a particular situation. The forces were unlikely to reconcile with the women's movement for social change. Thank you.